Alright, Derek, John, and Steve. So we've already gone through and given our predictions for the upcoming decade, but now it's time to reduce the scope a little bit. We're going from the next 10 years to the next 1 year. Specifically, what Nintendo's going to be doing in 2020. So of course, I figured we'd start things off with what we do know about Nintendo in 2020, and as it turns out, it's quite a bit less than what we knew about Nintendo in 2019. Before we get into the exact specifics of it though, how are you guys feeling about Nintendo in 2020 in general? Are you excited for what we know about and what we may not know about? What's your general take on this year so far? Or on this year. It's 2020 now.
Hype. I'm really hyped because we don't know a thing. And we're in the third year of the Switch now. Most of the main franchises are out there. So it's time for the weird stuff. I'm really excited for whatever this year's gonna be.
I mean, we might get the weird stuff, but as Breath of the Wild is already showing, we got a sequel already, and that might come out this year, might come out next year. It's hard to say, but I think it might be time for those stuff that did really well the first year to get sequels or do that. I mean, I'm still excited to see what they come up with, and we might get original content, we might get weird things added to the schedule. Who knows? But it is interesting to go into this not really knowing a lot. In past years, it's like, well, that's all we're getting for the year. But with the Switch, it's like, okay, we're going to get some new stuff and should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, we went into 2019 also not knowing much. And to me, that made the first few months of 2019 incredibly exciting because we just kind of, like in January, I think they just randomly started dropping announcements like crazy. And then we had our February Direct, and it was a crazy first quarter of the year. We just found out all this cool stuff that was going to happen. And we know even less going into 2020. So I'm really excited to see how these first couple months of the year play out and just what bombs Nintendo's waiting to drop on us.
Hopefully good ones.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good year. I'm excited.
So it's interesting, Steve, that you say we didn't know much, because while that might be true in the grand scheme of things, at the time it felt like we did, because we knew about New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Luigi's Mansion 3, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Yoshi's Crafted World, and quite a few more. But there were a few games that were on there that we weren't sure if they were actually going to hit that year or not, such as Shin Megami Tensei V, Bayonetta 3, and Metroid Prime 4. Of course, they didn't, and we'll probably discuss them in some form in this one. But yeah, as for 2020, all we know about, as far as I know, is Tokyo Mirage Sessions, FE, what have you, Sharp Encore, however you say it.
You never say the ending, just Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
Seriously. Animal Crossing New Horizons, Bravely Default 2, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and of course Breath of the Wild 2, or whatever it ends up being called. And as you kind of touched on earlier, Derek, those are all, if not sequels, remakes, or upgraded ports, basically. Nothing fully new there. So that's a good list if you like RPGs. For me, the only things that really speak to me are Animal Crossing and Zelda and Breath of the Wild 2. So I am excited, though, to see what else, they're going to show off. So yeah, let's talk about some of these games a little bit more in depth before we get to our own more out there predictions, perhaps. I guess coming up first is Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Now, there's not a whole lot to say about that, but we kind of know most of it, I think, especially since we have the game. I don't think we can talk about it quite yet, but are you guys excited for this, or do you think this would be a good way to start off the year for the Switch?
It deserves a second chance. I mean, it came out right at the end of Wii U, at the end of 2016, so barely anyone played this game. And it is legit a great game, so yeah, I think people should be excited, but whether it's going to be, like pushing Switches, probably not.
Mm-hmm. It's a good January game. I've only played a little bit of it myself, of the original release, never finished it, but it's definitely not a huge title. It's not, I don't know how well it's going to do, but thankfully it's in January. It's before the big March rush. People have maybe a couple extra bucks after the whole Christmas season. Maybe they're broke, who knows? But it's a good game to kill a bit of time until the bigger releases come, and I think that it might excel in that spot. I'm not expecting huge sales, but decent.
It's funny you say that it's a good January game, because it's basically taking the slot that New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe had last year, where it's pretty much the same game with a few new features, and yeah, it's probably not going to make a huge... Oh, I guess Mario sold well, but it's not a game you need to... I mean, it's a slower time of year, right? So it's not like a huge game that's going to be brand new to everyone.
I guess what's exciting, though, is that Fire Emblem 3 Houses is huge, so it's going to be interesting to see what a Fire Emblem spin-off is going to be like post 3 Houses, especially as Shin Megami Tensei is also not on Switch yet. So this might actually do surprisingly well.
And it's worth noting, like you said, John, it is a really good game. This was, my 2016 game of the year. But I do have to say, as somebody who has played through it and completed it a couple of times, I'm not really super hyped to play it again on Switch. I understand there might be some additional content, like minimal stuff though, and I may check it out, but I don't think I'm going to be rushing out to pick this one up. But like you said, barely anybody played this because it was on the Wii U and right before the end of its life, so I think it has some good potential. But yeah, it's not going to set the world on fire or anything. I'm much more hyped for what's coming in March.
You're like one of 3 people who have played the game, Steve. So.
Well, yeah, I'm 33% of the player base.
So that means this new game should reach at least, 20 people, given the relative install base?
We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, which actually is legitimately, I think, going to be massive. And that is, of course, Animal Crossing New Horizons, coming out on March 20th. So not too long from now, really. And Nintendo's already started kicking out the marketing for it with ads running for the game, which is interesting, but it still feels like a game we don't know a lot about, or at least I hope we don't know a lot about it. Maybe we know everything, and that would be concerning. How are you guys feeling about Animal Crossing? Are you all jazzed for it? And what are your kind of like hopes and expectations for it this year?
I am on fire for this game.
Wow.
I cannot wait. Animal Crossing is one of my favorite franchises, and I easily, with every single entry, spend 500-600 hours in these games. So just to have a new one and to have it on a proper home console again, just yes. Everything about this is wonderful to me. It looks gorgeous. It's finally like a different setting. It's changing up the Animal Crossing formula in ways that I think it needs to, and I still have my fingers crossed for some additional details about it, but I'll get into those more in the predictions.
It's going to be huge. I was looking at 3DS sales, and Animal Crossing sold better than Smash. I feel like this could be one of the best-selling Switch games. And as Steve said, it just looks so good. I'm not like a huge Animal Crossing fan, but just the vibe is so pleasing. And I love how the customization looks in New Horizons. Like every villager they've shown so far looks completely different to a previous one. Like you can change your nose for the first time, your mouth, your eyes, your skin tone, which is something I'm so shocked they haven't done that in like the 20 years of the series. But it's so refreshing that you can now, though.
I'm excited for fans. I personally, I tried with New Leaf and I got into it a little bit, but I'm like, I'm not spending $60 on a game that I'm going to play for maybe a week and then put it down. You know, it's just not enough for me. It's not my type of thing, and it's coming out in the middle of March, surrounded by a lot of big games that I honestly care about a lot more. But as far as how it's looking, it's a fine-looking Animal Crossing. There is obvious improvements going on. The aesthetic is wonderful. It's just not my type of game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's clear because you say you'd only play for a week when most people are going to be playing this for years.
Yeah, exactly. People are dedicated to it. They really enjoy it. Again, that's so cool for them that they can enjoy this, get lost in this game, and that's going to be great. And I have some predictions regarding that, but I'm sure you guys have sort of the same predictions as far as that goes. But yeah, I think as John said, this thing's going to sell like so crazily well.
Oh, it's going to do nuts because New Leaf already sold a ridiculous amount, and now that this is, I mean, everything seems to sell better on Switch inherently, and beyond that, it's of course a combination. Well, I mean, actually, as part of that probably, it's a combination of the handheld and console markets, of which Animal Crossing has been on both. So yeah, this is going to be a massive, massive game, and I am excited for it myself. I love the original Animal Crossing, and I dabbled with most of the series since then. Although I didn't get quite wrapped up into New Leaf as some others did. I played for about a month, I think, before I dropped it. Maybe 2 months, I can't remember exactly. What I'm really hoping here is that they nail the online. That's going to be the major thing for me here, is how well are they going to execute on the promise of online, of the idea of being able to enjoy this town with your friends. And that's something that they've started to dabble with more and more with the series over the years, but they've never really gone in as much as they should, I think, and I'm hoping this will be the one that they do. Like, if we can all live in the same town, like we can have like a little Game Explain town where we can participate together, that would be amazing.
Exactly.
Right? Would that not be incredible? We can just like screw with each other if we want. I can plant a bunch of pitfalls outside your house, Steve, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I like how you take it to a bad place almost immediately.
All right, but I mean, for real, this could be like a very productive game, right? Like you have you have family members who may live in other states from you, like living together. Like we don't know much about the online, if really anything. So I'm really hoping they've been saving that until like a full Animal Crossing Direct, which I imagine, if it's not part of the January Direct, if there is a January Direct, it'll get its own dedicated Direct, which I'm thinking might be what they do. Like just dedicate half an hour to showing what you can do in Animal Crossing New Horizons.
I reckon they're going to have a social media blowout. We saw, as soon as it turned 2020, they put out a new Animal Crossing trailer. And I feel like this is the kind of game where you sort of spread like little details over time rather than just blowing it all at once. I think that people just, they look at Animal Crossing information more on social media than they do in like giant directs. So I kind of expect them to just very slowly trickle out a bunch of details from now until release.
I think they'll do both. I think we'll both get a direct and plenty of smaller details.
Even Pocket Camp got a direct.
That's a good point.
That's true.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a chance that it doesn't show up as a major feature, if not in a direct, as its own direct. Or, yeah.
And it's worth noting that Nintendo actually kind of treats Animal Crossing differently than their other franchises in terms of how they disseminate media about it. I mean, Animal Crossing has a very large Tumblr presence even. And I think Splatoon is the only other franchise where they really leverage that platform at all. Because the fan base is just so different from the typical Nintendo fan base. It's one of the few franchises Nintendo has that really reaches beyond your standard Nintendo fan group.
Mm-hmm. Right, like Isabel's got her own Twitter. Waluigi doesn't have a Twitter.
Why is it always gotta be Waluigi as a counterexample? Can't you guys find another character to diss on?
Tingle doesn't have a Twitter.
Yeah, that's true.
Chibi Robo doesn't have a Twitter, and he was hot on Twitter for a minute.
Chibi Robo would never have a Twitter. Actually, what would be kind of cool, John, as you were saying about social media, they opened up like a town-based like Instagram or social media for like where each character from the game could participate in some way, where like we hear more from the shopkeepers or the mayor or Isabel, or if you're not the mayor this time, I guess the mayor, you know what I mean, like have different characters chime in.
Can you imagine a town where all the villagers just read tweets? Like they'll say things like, "Oh, you didn't really beat a game with save states."
I don't want to live in that town.
I want Mr. Rossetti to get a Twitter.
Oh God.
He just hides every reply to him. It'd be so great. Yeah, I'm really curious about Animal Crossing New Horizons because on the foundational level, we know a lot about it. It's going to be similar to the original. To the entire series, But on the other hand, I still feel like there's definitely stuff Nintendo's been hiding and hasn't fully disclosed at this point. I just want to know what that is. And I'm hyped to find out more. So yeah, this game's going to be massive.
I want a house where the colors mirror your Joy-Con setup. So
yeah, oh my god.
That
should be like a new, like a special type of roofing for your house. Where,
oh, hell yeah.
where it reflects directly what's connected to your Switch. That would be cool. Alright, well let's go ahead and move on to a game that we just found out about recently at the Game Awards. And that's Bravely Default 2. How are you guys feeling about this? Like, do you think, I guess they did announce it for 2020, but when do you think it'll actually land for this year?
Probably late. They showed very little. Mm-hmm. They showed they showed like 5 seconds of gameplay and there's a static shot of the characters. So I'd imagine it's kind of early, but they have been teasing this since the start of 2019. So perhaps it's further along than it seems. But one thing I will say, I went onto the website to listen to the soundtrack, because it's on there without any sound effects. And it sounds so good. It's so great to have Revo back doing the soundtrack. They are gods. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is going to have probably, well, I guess it'd be on par or even better than the original soundtrack.
What time did Octopath Traveler come out?
Octopath came 2018.
Yeah, but in the summer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'd say probably around there. It seems like a good July game. Because I don't know if Bravely Default's big enough yet to handle the winter months, but it's kind of perfect for summer.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I feel kind of the same way about Bravely Default that Derek feels about Animal Crossing. Like, I'm excited for the fans that are going to play this, but the series has just not really captured my interest. It looks nice. Like John said, the soundtrack is awesome, but I tried playing the original on 3DS and it just never really clicked for me, and so I'm kind of not really too invested either way about this second or third entry titled 2 in the series. So really hyped that people are going to enjoy it. I know Ash was over the moon about the announcement, but it's just something that I'll probably let it pass me by.
That's fair enough. I think what I really like about Bravely Default, especially at the time, was it was just a typical RPG. I felt Final Fantasy kept experimenting, and it had been a while since we had like a proper turn-based RPG from Square, and even Dragon Quest had gone a while without a new iteration. So I guess it was just cool to go back to the basics, to go back to being Default. There were problems with the original one where it kind of repeated its content halfway through, so Bravely Default 2 has a chance to kind of have the core formula of the original without any of the fluff. So that's what I find exciting about this. Mm-hmm. And it's also cool to have a handheld game on the Switch, like a pure handheld game. We're seeing that with Brain Age, we're seeing that, I guess, with Pokemon. It's just great to see all these handheld franchises come to this hybrid system.
Yeah, it's probably the most exciting part, and seeing these towns and seeing what they do with the visual representation, like if it's just 3D-S up-resed and made a bit more console-like, even that, I think it'll still look good. And maintain that style, which we've already seen from the trailer. So I'm expecting good things, honestly.
Alright, well, let's move on to another game, being Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Derek, I know you're a huge fan of the original game based on our Game of the Decade discussions. So how are you guys feeling about this one, being basically an upgraded port, or being an upgraded version of a game that I think that is beloved to many, but also kind of like went under the radar at the time, largely because it was ignored in North America until a couple years after its original release. So do you guys think this game will make an even bigger impact on the Switch?
Absolutely. It's one of those games that just it slowly built up its fan base. Like, people played it, they talked about it, more people were like, all right, I gotta check this out and see it, and then they loved it, and it just kept growing and growing, sort of naturally under the radar, until we got Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And even Xenoblade Chronicles X is very well beloved to its own, but it's very different from the original Xenoblade. So 2 sort of struck that chord a little bit more, and to have the original with better graphics, with restored content, is extremely exciting, especially because we really don't have that much to go on. All we know is it's an HD version. We're getting restored content that they didn't even officially announce. It's just people recognize the cut content, and that's all we need. That's exciting to see this game redone on the Switch with a much better chance at a bigger audience.
That's so cool too, because that shot right at the end of the trailer is pulled from the game's files. Like, people have known about that area for a long time, but it's never been officially stated. So the trailer ends with like a swoop over of the Bayonessa's shoulder, which is something that Nintendo have never acknowledged before. So it's just super cool to show that in the trailer and just assume that fans know what it is. And it also implies that there's more. It implies there's going to be more cut content that was never in the original game. So this is just, it seems like a very ambitious remake. Like, every asset has been redone, the faces look way better, and it makes me wonder, like, what else is this remake hiding?
One thing it's hiding is the release date. We don't know exactly when it's coming out beyond 2020. So if you guys had to peg it down, when might you expect this?
Honestly, December, same release window as Xenoblade 2. That did very well for that game. Xenoblade 2 is the highest grossing game in the series, and I could see it pulling it off. Maybe November, they might try to go that route and slot it in for that, but depends on what other big games they have coming. Like, for example, if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year, I would expect it November, so that would put Xenoblade in a better spot with December, just a little bit after that, and, got those 2 huge things. Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 complicates things a lot, but we'll get into that later. But if I had to peg it, December.
My one wrinkle with that is that, why would they announce it so early? Why would they announce it the year beforehand? Because it's not a brand new game, it is a remake. And I guess with Xenoblade 2 they had to announce it early because it's part of the Switch's first year lineup. So I kind of feel like this might launch in the first half of the year.
I think so too. I don't know if they announce a remake a year and a half, or an update, I guess. Whatever. They did to Definitive Edition a year and a half before its release. I think it'll be the first half of the year too. Plus, I don't know if they'd want Zelda and Xenoblade, which are probably have a lot of crossover in terms of demographics, competing with each other, just a few weeks apart potentially.
I feel like releasing a Zelda next to a new Xenoblade just kind of dooms that Xenoblade to obscurity, at least for a while. Especially with a big mainline Zelda. I feel like Nintendo would want to kind of make room for that in their release calendar. So if, and I'll get into more what I think about Breath of the Wild 2 later, but if Breath of the Wild 2 releases in this calendar year, I don't think that Nintendo would want to put another big budget game up against it unless they absolutely have to for whatever reason.
Xenoblade is May 8th. Lock it in.
Wow. I love it, John. I love how fully on board you are with that. All right. Well, we've been talking a lot about Zelda, so let's finally discuss the elephant in the room, which is, of course, Breath of the Wild 2, whatever it ends up being. And my first question to all of you, since we've been kind of talking about a roundabout way, is this actually hitting in 2020? Do you think it's actually going to make it this year?
No.
I think they're going to say yes, but it won't.
I think it will.
Okay, so just, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but Derek, that is exactly my prediction about this game.
Yeah.
Like, I have it on my list right here. It will be announced for 2020 and will not release in 2020.
I mean, that's the Zelda way. I'm actually a bit more optimistic. I think they might hit their deadline this time. This is such a big game. I think they're going to put a lot of resources into it, and it's, of course, built off a foundation of a game that's already existed for 2 years at this, 3 years, I suppose, at this point. So I feel like it might very well hit the 2020 deadline.
It might, yeah. I mean, it's possible. Like, if it gets delayed, I don't think it'd be substantial. It's just based off the history of Zelda delays. I wouldn't be shocked if it gets pushed out of the holiday window. And given the fact that Breath of the Wild 1 released in March and it didn't matter, I don't think it would have much impact on Breath of the Wild's 2 success either. With that being said, I don't think, if Zelda gets pushed next year, I don't think that means they wouldn't have a huge holiday title this year. I think they would. It's just that I will offer my prediction for that a little bit later, so...
Sure. Which, that's kind of important too, though, because next-gen systems are launching, and they do need something to sort of push the Switch. I don't necessarily think the Switch is directly competing with next-gen systems, but something like Breath of the Wild 2 would definitely turn eyes away from them, away from the other consoles.
Absolutely.
So I think it's definitely a good incentive for them to bring it out this year.
I don't know if Nintendo really cares about that, though. I mean, I'm not one of those people who would say Nintendo isn't competing with other systems, because they are, no matter how much Nintendo would say otherwise. But I don't think they care about that. You know, I mean, I think people are going to be, if you're looking forward to the PS5 or the next Xbox Series X, I don't think Zelda coming out this year or next is going to affect that one bit. I don't think it matters to most people.
I mean, the Switch is already a supplement to PS4 and Xbox One. A great amount of users for the Switch own other systems, and I don't think that's going to change in the next gen. I think it's still going to be a supplement, so I don't necessarily think they need to have something else out there. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we will indeed. Now, what do you guys actually expect for the game itself? What are you kind of expecting in terms of the game? We know almost nothing about it, beyond the fact that the original world will evidently be in the game in some form, and Zelda's there. So, what are you guys kind of hoping for?
That's more than you can say for most, a couple other Zelda games, so that's something.
That's true, it is something.
And I think that's kind of key, because maybe I'm fooling myself at this point, but I'm almost half expecting Zelda to be playable in this one.
I think she's the only playable character. If you watch the trailer again, the shots emphasize her so much. She's always at the front, whereas Link is sort of like a background character. I wonder if something's going to happen to Link and Zelda takes over.
That would be such a bold choice if you're playing exclusively as Zelda, or at least primarily as Zelda versus Link. That would truly embrace the Legend of Zelda title.
And we'll get a video out about this later on, but how are they going to explain Link going back to Three Hearts again? I mean, they've done it before, of course, but this is a different kind of Link where you spent hours with him, he's reclaimed all his memories, he's gone through 120 shrines, he's beat Ganon, he already has the Master Sword, which you see in the trailer. How are they going to push him back down again? I think that the easiest answer is just don't have him.
That's true. That was all the problem.
I'm of a different mind. I think that Zelda will be playable, but I think it's going to be a co-op Zelda game. I think we're going to have Zelda and Link playable, and if you're playing by yourself, you switch between them, but you can also have somebody join in with you and take control of either Zelda or Link and play with you.
Would it have like split screen or two switches?
I don't know.
That seems massively ambitious for an open world game of the scope of the original Breath of the Wild.
I agree, but I also feel like it is the least expected move, and I think Nintendo is going to be looking to surprise people with this new Zelda. And I don't know what it is, but I don't see Nintendo going the route of having Zelda as the only protagonist in the game, just because they seem to be so like afraid of offending literally anybody.
This sounds like Star Wars.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I feel like there'd be a big backlash if Link wasn't a playable character, even though I think it is a great idea and I would love to see it. I just think that Nintendo would be fearful of angering, the worst kind of gamers over.
Have like a Link mask.
I have an answer for that. Screw those people.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, they could pull a Metal Gear Solid 2, right? Where you start off as Link, but something happens and you switch focus to a different character, which in this case would be Zelda.
That.
Yeah, that is another option.
Imagine as well is right at the start of the game, it takes all of your Breath of the Wild 1 save data as well, so that you start off with your entire inventory.
Just deletes it.
You've got all your hearts. I think you just lose all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. We'll see what they go with, but I mean, the possibilities are open. I do hope at the very least we get a more story-focused Breath of the Wild game. I mean, it's hard to say what the story even is. Like, yeah, they show Ganondorf. What does that mean? The castle lifts up. What does that mean?
That's the kind of dilemma here. Breath of the Wild is praised for how open it was. You could go anywhere you want, do anything in pretty much any order. But the side effect of that was that the story was pretty much inconsequential to the overall adventure. Whatever story it did have was pretty much completely independent of everything else going on in the world, of which there really wasn't that much in terms of like a narrative sense. So how do they address that? How do you add more story while still allowing you to go anywhere at any time in any order?
I don't know, but I'm fully on board for this to be a weird Zelda.
Yes! Yes! It needs to be weird. That's what I want. I want something Majora's Mask style, completely just out there. Something we haven't quite seen before.
And I think that's your answer for if you want more story, Majora's Mask style. Not necessarily the overall story, but the individual character tales. Each town maybe having their own story, each person having their own story that you help them with and see them change and evolve and improve. And I think that's where you get your story. Like, you get these individual character tales that gradually build up Zelda. And so maybe the overall plot isn't that amazing, but the individual stories is where you get you cut your teeth on that kind of stuff.
Right, and you do have like a good reason for people to be a lot more animated. When we were talking about Breath of the Wild in the Game of the Decade discussion, I kind of defended how blasé everyone was because most of the people in the world grew up with Ganon floating around the castle. But, the castle never rocketed up into the sky. So everybody in the world should be pretty freaked out. Hey, I know we used to have purple cloud pig guy, but now the whole castle's in the air. So now maybe it's a good time to be worried about things.
That'd be hilarious. I'd love if they framed it that way. The purple cloud thing, it was a mild concern, but now that the castle's in the sky, whoa.
Now it's a little too weird.
You can do way more with world building too. Like, Breath of the Wild has so many areas that are just ruins, and a lot of them pay homage to previous Zelda games. But I think you can do more with the lore. Like, just have a reason for why everything's in ruins, or have like some story elements going on in some places that just don't matter. Or
bring back the memory concept where you see those places in their prime.
Oh man, it bugs me so much that in the Champion's Ballad, in like the final cutscene, there's a fully restored castle town, and you never see it again. Like, you see it for like maybe 5 seconds in a cutscene, but you never go there again. And I want to explore there so badly, but you barely see it.
Yeah, that's what I would love. If they bring back the concept of memories, let you play the memories. Don't just watch them. I want to play them. Like, if you can re-experience that world in a different time without actually introducing a time traveling mechanic.
That could be the gimmick of this game. Like, maybe you go back and forth between the past and the present.
A link to the past, if you will.
Perhaps.
A Zelda to the past, all right?
You know what I wonder is if they might take... So one of the terms that threw around a lot with the original Breath of the Wild was not open world, it was open air. This was an open air game. And a big part of that is because you're not stuck at ground level as you are with quite a few open world games. In this one, you can climb up everything and fly from there to other destinations. So I wonder if Hyrule Castle going up into the skies, maybe a hint at them expanding the open air idea, where maybe traversal around this world will be different in some way to how it was before, such as perhaps maybe bringing in the loft wings from Skyward Sword and letting you actually fly around this world proper, or doing something else of that nature.
This reminds me of Gravity Rush 2. So in Gravity Rush 2, the world of the first game was like underneath the clouds, and then you got a brand new world above the clouds. So it'd be cool if you have like Breath of the Wild 1's world down below, and then Breath of the Wild 2 is like an expansion of what Skyloft should have been. Fully populate the clouds up above.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, Zelda's played around with Sky Cities before, so that wouldn't be out of character for them. And who knows? Maybe it's aliens above us all along. So, you want to get weird? We got to bring back the aliens from Majora's Mask.
I am in for that.
Exactly, and you're kind of touching on something there, Derek. Is I want like a real threat. Like as Steve was saying earlier, purple cloud thing never really felt that threatening. Like the world itself didn't seem too concerned with it, so why should I as a player? I want something that feels like intimidating this time, and I mean that in two senses. One, I want like the narrative to support the idea where like, there's this enemy or force out there that we need to deal with. But also I think it'd be cool if they did something maybe that involves like the passage of time. And again, I don't mean time traveling, but something that adds pressure to your journey in some way, where there are like time sensitive things that happen in the world where if you don't fulfill this objective, it's going to have a negative impact on this world. Like I want to see this world like change throughout the story as a result of your actions. And if you don't save a town in time, that town is going up in smoke. Like, it's just gone.
I'm picturing, like, you accept a side quest right at the start of the game, and you don't get around to it until, like, 50 hours in, and the person, like, wants 50 bananas or something. And, like, 50 hours later, they're like, screw you, I've already got those bananas. That quest's over.
Yeah,
Keep the bananas.
Like, that reminds me of the dog from Resident Evil 4. Like, it's a little inconsequential action at the start, seemingly, but it has a fairly sizable impact later on. Like, I want stuff like that, where instead of just, like, every reward being, like, a digital currency thing, have it make an impact on this world. Like, that's what I want to see. Like, Breath of the Wild did a great job of the moment-to-moment, like, gameplay having significance in a very small sense. I want that to be expanded now. I want that to have a greater impact now, affecting characters or locations, maybe even the ending.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would also love to see shrines go away. I mean, it kind of makes no sense for shrines to still exist in Breath of the Wild 2, because Link, in theory, should have found and completed them all. So I really hope they don't find a way to shoehorn more shrines in just to pad out the gameplay.
I mean, that raises a really interesting question, because if this is the same world, largely, the shrines still have to at least be there in concept, or, as structures, rather. They have, I mean, unless there's some story-based reason that they all got destroyed or something. So would you be able to revisit those shrines, or would they just be, like, powered down and you can't go into them anymore? Like, how do we...
Shrines came from the ground, if you remember. Like, they you activate the first tower in the plateau, and then they all sort of come out. So I guess they could have retracted back in or something.
Wait,
I don't know.
Was that not... Did the shrines come up too? I thought that was just the towers.
I'm pretty sure the shrines came along as well.
That's a good question.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I just played through the beginning again, and I didn't think to look.
Yeah.
But either way, like, like I said, I really want this one to be, like, weird in the way that other games are weird. I would love it if we saw that now that Ganon's no longer a threat, the Sheikah are kind of back and utilizing their technology, since they don't really have to hide, and maybe they do something goofy, like turn shrines into item shops or some dumb crap like that. I would love to see something where the world is a lot more technological, thanks to the fact that the Sheikah no longer really are oppressed the way they were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me screams like a 10-year time difference, and this pretty obviously picks up maybe a month or two after the original.
That's true.
There's no significant age difference. They're exploring underground. Something's going on, but it seems to be pretty soon after the end of the first game. So I would not expect, like, oh, hey, we found all this technology.
They're clones, Derek.
It's a totally different Link and Zelda.
I do not want the modern champions in. I hate... What's the name of the Goron champion, who's not the older one, the newer one? Like, Boogie Boogie or something. I hate him.
No, I forget, but we all know him and we all hate him.
Oh, man, yeah. That guy was so goofy. I can't remember his name either.
If the time is as compressed as you're saying, Derek, I do wonder, like, what they can do to make this world interesting to explore again. Because I think for many of us, like, once you kind of, like, explore the world, you know what's out there. And I think some of us have done it multiple times already. What can they do to liven that up if we are exploring the same terrain for a bulk of the game?
Honestly, I almost wonder if it's a bait and switch. Like, they show that area, we never saw any of the specific areas. Maybe the castle rising up is taking Link and Zelda with them, and it changes up something.
You're going to space, baby!
There you go. It's hard to say because they could reuse it, but again, that's, as you said, you're revisiting the same stuff you saw before. You've probably explored a lot of this, so it's not as exciting. So, yes, they can use a lot of the same assets, but they need to do something different, or else you just won't care about exploring the world again.
It's tough. It's really hard to answer this question without knowing more. But Breath of the Wild had so many ruined areas, it'd be great just to build them up. Like, there's so many towns which are just ruins. So it'd be cool to build them up again.
So every town's Terry Town?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. But, like, the point of Breath of the Wild was the wild. It's about exploring the wild. And I don't know if you can do that again just by reusing the exact same world. It's so odd. I can't figure this one out without knowing more about the game.
It's tough because, as you were saying, like, a huge component of the original was just exploring and seeing what's out there. And now that we know what's out there, they either have to populate it with more interesting things, or have you exploring a different area entirely, or finding some way to twist the world we know into something a little bit different. And that's the thing that gives me pause. Like, what are they doing here? It's so interesting, and I really don't know what it's going to be.
I mean, it doesn't have to be the exact same. As we know Majora's Mask used a lot of the assets from Ocarina of Time, and that's a completely different game.
Yeah, but they didn't show Hyrule Field in the first trailer for that game.
True.
That's why I wonder, like, what are they doing here?
I mean, and it could just be that, we know that it's quote unquote Breath of the Wild 2, but really Nintendo hasn't titled this game. And it could be that it doesn't focus at all on exploration and is deeply mechanically different. Mm-hmm. We have no idea. It could be that it's focused more on protecting the world instead of exploring it, right? It could be a lot more linear than Breath of the Wild. All we know is that narratively it's a sequel. So they could take this a whole bunch of different directions, but I do agree that if it mechanically is similar and the exploration plays a big part, that they do have to do something. I mean, yeah, sure, ripping the castle out and throwing it in the air is pretty big, but most players spend a minimal amount of time in that area of the world because there were reasons to be literally everywhere else. I would hope that, we would see something like in the form of even just a brief time skip to where people have at least built up the world a bit, or something. But yeah, there has to be something to make it different. Otherwise, you're just running over the same terrain, doing the same thing. But
going by what we know, I wonder if they might be introducing, a major underground component, because we see Zelda and Link in the cave, which is something that wasn't really in Breath of the Wild, and then of course the castle lifts up, which maybe that's a main access point to the underground, or reveals a whole new area or world underneath the surface.
Maybe that's what the explanation for no shrines is. Maybe they're all underground now.
We know the Sheikah excelled at building stuff underground somehow, so why not?
I don't think they're going to get more linear. I don't think you do a sequel to Breath of the Wild and then go back to what Zelda used to be, or in any way like that. I think they're just I think if anything, they're going to double down on the openness and make it more open. The game's successful because you could do anything in your own way, and I think that's probably what they're going to go for again.
Do you think they can introduce any new, core elements? In Breath of the Wild, you start with your 4 main abilities. Do you think they can add to that? I mean, do you think, first off, do you think those will come back? And what do you think they can add on to that to give you something new to play around with?
I could see them introducing magic for Zelda.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
If Zelda's indeed playable, I don't see her using a Sheikah Slate. I see her instead using either Triforce powers or some kind of magic, really differentiating her from Link.
She didn't have magic in Breath of the Wild, though, right? Or
I
guess she kind of did.
For 100 years.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
she also has a Sheikah Slate, though, so she probably is capable of runes, so I guess bombs could come back. But I think the important thing is photo mode, a proper photo mode, and not the stupid low-res selfie one that they put in there with the stupid overlay. I want a proper photo mode like Mario Odyssey's. The Breath of the Wild is so beautiful, and I want to show people what the goofy things that I'm doing with proper angles, proper lighting, proper filters. Let me have a photo mode.
Nice. What I'm most excited about is a better inventory. I hated the inventory in Breath of the Wild, and I'm excited for what they can do now with actual time invested into making a better one. But I think it's pretty clear they had to completely redo whatever they had planned for the Wii U in order to make it work on the Switch. And I hope now that they give us something better, I've argued that a radial inventory would be awesome. Something along the lines of what we've seen in Horizon Zero Dawn. Or, I always go back to my text entry thing from Beyond Good and Evil, which I adore. I wish someone would make an actual inventory out of that because it's so good. It's just fun to use by itself. But yeah, I think menu management will be improved greatly in Breath of the Wild 2.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys would want to see in this game?
My biggest problem with Breath of the Wild 1 is I feel the weapon management becomes less important as the game goes on, especially at the end once you've done everything. Mm-hmm. You just rely on your Master Sword the entire time, especially after the Trial of the Sword, where it becomes the most powerful weapon in the game. So I want them to either devalue the Master Sword in some way, or just find a way to make weapon degradation a bigger part of the game in the post-game. Mm-hmm. Which I know people hate. I know people hate their weapons breaking, but I feel that's an important part of the game.
I would like for there to be a post-game.
Yeah,
I don't
the
really
entire
think
game's the post-game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like Breath of the Wild doesn't offer a whole lot once you've beat Ganon. Like, there's very little motivation to keep collecting stuff like Korok seeds, for instance.
I totally agree with you. The moment I finished Breath of the Wild, I'm like, well, that's it. I'm good. I don't need to go find all the Korok seeds or anything else. Like, if there had been like a greater purpose of the Korok seeds, maybe. But I agree with you, Steve. I think it'd be cool if there was something to do after you beat the main game, and that still provides motivation for finishing or seeing the rest of the world. Assuming we haven't seen it all before, which, again, we really don't know. Alright, well, let's go ahead and talk about real quick the 3 other potential games we know about for 2020, being Shin Megami Tensei V, Bayonetta 3, and Metroid Prime 4. Are all 3 of these hitting in 2020?
No.
Prime 4's not hitting in 2021.
No. I think the only one that has a shot of hitting in 2020 is Bayonetta 3.
Do you not think Shin Megami Tensei 5?
I mean, I don't know. They might pull it out. I mean, they did say that development is still ongoing for it, so potentially it could happen, but I don't know. I feel like they might surprise us, but I have a gut feeling that we might get previews of it in 2020 that's coming in 2021, but it's definitely not coming out in 2020.
I think it is. I think they shut it off during the January presentation in 2017, so it's been 3 years since the announcement, and it's been a long time since Shin Megami Tensei 4 as well on 3DS. I feel like this has to be somewhat of a priority to them now. It's been so long. Atlus haven't really done a Switch game apart from Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and they probably want to capitalize on the Switch's success, so I feel like that they probably will hit this year. But I can see where Derek's coming from. Maybe they just won't.
Yeah, I'm with Derek on this one. I don't think Shin Megami Tensei V is even close to completion. I think it's languishing in development hell somewhere. Because I feel like with the amount of time that has elapsed, we would have seen something of this game if it was close to release. And we haven't seen any gameplay at all. We haven't even seen really like character art for this game. So I don't think it's in a very good place developmentally, and I don't think 2020 is going to change that. I expect we might see our first look at actual gameplay, but it's definitely a 2021 game.
So it sounded like, are we in agreement that Metroid Prime 4 won't be releasing this year either, then?
Yes.
Yeah.
No question. I mean, they started development a year ago now.
Well, that's when they announced it, so it could have been a little bit longer than that, but I do agree with you. I think it's extremely unlikely we see it's released this year. Which leaves then Bayonetta 3. This is the game that was revealed a couple of years ago now, I believe. 2017 Game Awards. And we've seen nothing since. Do you think it's coming this year? And when are we going to see it?
I'm going to say yes, and my prediction is same release date as Astral Chain.
So that was
August.
End of August.
Yeah.
August. I actually had September in mind, but I think August, yeah. I could see that working up a good post-E3 game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good
I
one.
reckon we'll probably see it in like a few days. I think it's going to be in the January Direct, if there is one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I would be shocked if this game doesn't hit this year. I'd be really surprised, even though it's the game we've almost seen the least of. I don't know, we've seen so little of all 3 of these games, actually. It's pretty wild.
I think the game we saw the most of is Shin Megami Tensei V.
Right,
Because that at least had
That
2
is
teasers.
not saying much.
Yeah.
Alright, and that covers pretty much everything we know about 2020 for sure, so it's about time for us to get into everything we don't know about 2020. But that's going to have to hold off for part 2 of this discussion, because I'm sure we have too many predictions to fit into this one video. So stay tuned for that coming up tomorrow, and of course stay tuned to Game Explained for lots more about Nintendo in 2020 in general, and everything else gaming as well. We'll catch you later. Bye.